Hello and welcome to Maximum Bowie, the first talking book about David Bowie. It was written and researched by Ben Graham, music is by Amanda Thompson, and it's read by Nancy McLean. You can check out our full catalogue on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk, where you can also join our Maximum Collectors Club to receive special offers and free CDs. Alternatively, join the Maximum Collectors Club by filling in the registration form attached to the booklet inside this CD and post it back to us.
Characters have been very much dropped since around 76, which I guess is about 14 years ago, so it's not really been a character thing with me over the last few years.
At the climax of the 2000 Glastonbury Festival, thousands are gathered for the headline act. Anticipation has been mounting all weekend. Some say the global superstar in question is ill and won't be appearing. Others are wondering why a performer with such a long history, now in his 50s, is headlining a new music festival at all. Critical consensus has deemed his output since his 70s heyday patchy, to say the least, and he once vowed never to sing any of his old songs again. Everyone, however, is hoping that the star will make an exception and perform some of his classic hits tonight. From the instant that David Bowie bounds on stage, all doubts evaporate. Bowie is every inch the consummate pop star, singing classic after classic for over 2 hours, from 1969's Space Oddity to 1997's Little Wonder. An encore of Ziggy Stardust, Heroes and Let's Dance silenced any critics who wondered why Bowie had been chosen to headline the festival, a festival he'd last played 29 years before. A lot had happened since then. Since a 24-year-old, Bowie played a magical, tremulous acoustic set at sunrise, before a few huddled hippies, who were later given free milk from the farm's dairies. David Bowie had abandoned flower power as quickly and decisively as he'd adopted it, to become the figurehead of a new generation who favoured glitter and makeup over love beads and patchouli. As such, he was one of the few older artists who remained credible through punk, retreating to Berlin to produce a series of groundbreaking LPs before returning to unprecedented commercial success in the 1980s. In the 90s, he once more embraced the cutting edge, a visual and conceptual artist as much as a musician. Throughout his career, David Bowie has taken on and discarded a multitude of styles, from folk and rock to R&B and industrial, reducing them down to an index of moves and gestures, a code in which to convey his message. Bowie was never an authentic rock and roller, but rather an immaculate stylist. Aware that in the media age image is a valuable commodity, he has presented and sold his with more care than anyone else, before or since. Every move, every look is planned and controlled to an almost obsessive degree. As such, any information about who is the real David Bowie is scarce and often contradictory. Bowie frequently telling journalists whatever story suits him best at the time. A great artist and a shrewd businessman, Bowie has amassed both a vast fortune and an unparalleled body of work in many areas. Recently, he floated his back catalogue on the stock market and provides both his own internet server and an online banking service. The sheer scope of his interests and activities over the years is staggering, but one thing is certain, the term pop star doesn't even begin to do David Bowie justice.
I prefer to envision time as being concurrent, that all past, all future, and all nowness exist in the one moment. So I don't really see cycles or evolvements or any of those things. I think it's inexplicable and impossible to articulate the process of life.
David Robert Jones, the boy who would be Bowie, was born in Brixton on the 8th of January 1947. David's mother, Peggy, was the eldest of 5 daughters, 3 of whom had been diagnosed as schizophrenic. Her mother too had displayed traits of mental illness and often behaved cruelly and irrationally towards her family. In her 20s, Peggy marched a couple of times with Oswald Molesley's British Union of Fascists, attracted less by their politics than their dashing black uniforms. Soon after, she had another brief flirtation, this time with the French barman of the Culverden Park Arms, giving birth in 1937 to her first son, Terry. The barman, Wolf Rosenberg, disappeared. Peggy had a second child in 1943, a daughter named Myra Ann. The result of an affair with a married man, she was adopted by foster parents. After the war, Peggy found work as a waitress at the Ritz Cinema in Tunbridge Wells, where she met Hayward Stenton Jones, commonly known as John. A failed show business promoter from Doncaster, he was then working for Dr. Barnardo's. When he and Peggy married, following David's birth, they moved to Brixton, and Peggy insisted that Terry come and live with them. For the past 10 years, Terry had been mainly brought up by his increasingly erratic grandmother, and John saw no reason for that to change. He saw Terry, with his blue-eyed good looks, as a constant reminder of Peggy's first lover. While David was the apple of his parents' eyes, Terry was ostracised by his stepfather, and his mother never felt able to show her children much physical affection. The only one who showed Terry any love at all was David, who obviously idolised his older brother. In 1953, when David was 6, the family moved from Brixton to Bromley in Kent. Terry was left behind in London before beginning his national service at 18. In Bromley, the Joneses tried to pretend that Terry never existed, but David still adored his older brother. When David was in his early teens, Terry would come home on leave, bringing back paperbacks by Jack Kerouac or William Burroughs, or taking David out to the jazz clubs of Soho. He introduced his little brother to subjects like poetry and Buddhism, and an impossibly glamorous, grown-up world that the suburban schoolboy longed to be a part of. At 11, David went to Bromley Technical High School, a halfway house between the grammar and the secondary modern. The art teacher there was Owen Frampton, father of future guitar hero Peter, who encouraged his students to come alive. Believing that there was no distinction between art and craft, that a carefully designed product could also be a form of self-expression, he made a lifelong impression on the creatively budding Bowie. At 14, David was punched in the left eye by his schoolmate George Underwood, who damaged the retina with a large ring he was wearing. David spent 8 months in hospital, and his sight was permanently impaired. The pupil remained constantly open, neither dilating nor contracting with the light. David's eyes now appeared to be different colours, creating the striking look that added a touch of authentic otherworldliness to Bowie's various personas, leading many to think that he really was an alien visitor to our planet. It was during his stay in hospital that David first decided to take control of his life and personality. Laid up in bed, reading the beat novels and European literature that Terry had recommended, he took a fresh look at himself and began to chuck out those aspects that he didn't like, replacing them with more desirable qualities. Not for the last time, he began to reinvent himself.
It's a natural conclusion that you come to, I think, if you have any brain cells, but as you get older, how little you actually are able to formulate, how hard it is to actually hold to any absolutes. That when you are young, everything often seems to be in black and white and so obvious. And why can't grown-ups see that this and this applies? And I think you find that you float on life when you get older, and you're not quite sure which way up it all is.
David's interests now included Buddhism, the Beats, baseball, rock and roll, and modern jazz. He persuaded his parents to buy him a plastic saxophone and took lessons from a local jazz musician recommended by Terry, Ronnie Ross. Then, in 1962, at the age of 15, he answered an ad in a Bromley record shop and joined his first group, the Conrads. The Conrads played mostly covers at youth clubs and village halls. David's own songs went unappreciated, and going under the name of Dave J, he stuck to saxophone, allowing a changing lineup of singers, including George Underwood, to claim the limelight. Despite David's frustration, the Conrads quickly became popular locally and eventually were invited to audition for Decca Records. Recording one of David's original compositions, the band thought that stardom beckoned, but to their disappointment, they were turned down. Soon after, David left the group. David's next musical venture, again with George Underwood, was the King Bees. By now, singing as well as playing sax, David's new passion was for rhythm and blues, in the style of Muddy Waters and the early Rolling Stones, and this was the direction the King Bees pursued. In an effort to boost their fortunes, David wrote to washing machine tycoon John Bloom asking for backing. Bloom declined, but passed his letter on to show business manager Leslie Conn. Conn took on the King Bees and arranged for David's second stab at recording for Decca. This time, the song was accepted, and the King Bee single Liza Jane was released on the label's Vocalion subsidiary in 1964. A raw, if derivative slice of maximum R&B, Liza Jane still stands up today, but the record was a flop. David left the King Bees and told Conn that he was looking for a new group. Conn suggested the Manish Boys, another R&B outfit from Maidstone, hailed as pioneers of the Medway sound that had so far failed to topple Merseybeat from the top of the charts. David's first influence on the group was to convince them to grow their hair, matching his own shoulder-length locks, and in November of 1964, David made his first TV appearance as president of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Long-Haired Men on the BBC's Tonight programme. Keeping a straight face, he told interviewer Cliff Mitchellmore of the prejudice he and his members faced. Shortly afterwards, the Manish Boys were booked to appear on the pop show Gadzooks, It's All Happening, but on March 4th, 1965, the Daily Mail reported that the BBC had banned David from appearing because his hair was too long. The story was a complete fabrication, cooked up by Conn and BBC producer Barry Langford. It wasn't enough, however, to make the Manish Boys record a hit. A cover of Bobby Blue Bland's I Pity the Fool, it was backed by David's first recorded composition, Take My Tip, a jazzy, organ-led number in the style of Georgie Fame. The Manish Boys broke up soon afterwards, and David was free to audition for another Medway band, the Lower Third. It was as Davy Jones and the Lower Third that they recorded the single You've Got a Habit of Leaving for Parlophone Records. Strongly influenced by The Who, David had by now cut his famous hair and embraced the smart, fastidious mod style. He was also about to change his name again, taking as his inspiration a Wild West adventurer who is remembered chiefly for his hunting knife. David Jones was about to become David Bowie.